There are moments in life when God moves so quietly, so tenderly, that the world doesn't even notice, but you know. You feel His hand opening doors you never knocked on, pouring blessings you never asked for, and arranging favor you could never earn. When that divine overflow comes, when God blesses you financially, spiritually, and beyond, be still. Don't rush to announce it. Not everyone will celebrate what heaven entrusted to you. Some will smile outwardly but question inwardly. Others will measure your miracle by their own lack. God's blessings are sacred. They are personal conversations between your obedience and His faithfulness. When you speak too soon, you invite voices that were never meant to interpret your testimony. Guard what God is doing. Let your life, not your lips, tell the story. Let your fruit speak louder than your announcement, because sometimes silence protects what noise can destroy. Remember, Joseph shared his dream too early, and it stirred jealousy that delayed his destiny. Learn from him. Wait until your promise matures. God doesn't need public approval to complete what He started in you. Your financial blessing isn't just money. It's a sign that heaven trusts you. So when increase comes, lift your hands, not your microphone. When overflow fills your cup, whisper a thank you to the one who made it possible. Stay humble, stay hidden, and let God finish His masterpiece in secret. The same God who rewarded you in private will reveal His glory in public in His perfect time. There is a holy power in silence, a power that modern believers often overlook in a world that constantly craves attention and validation. When God blesses you, whether it's financially, spiritually, or emotionally, that blessing carries divine weight. It's not just an event. It's a sacred exchange between heaven and your heart. The world teaches you to broadcast everything, to show, to tell, to prove. But God often whispers, keep this between us for now. Sacred silence is not secrecy born from fear. It's wisdom born from reverence. It means you recognize that the blessing is holy and that not every eye or ear is prepared to understand it. There's a reason Jesus healed people and told them, tell no one. It wasn't because the miracle wasn't real. It was because premature exposure can invite spiritual interference. When you protect what God gives you with silence, you're not hiding your miracle. You're honoring it. You're allowing it to root deeply before it's revealed. When God blesses you financially, especially after seasons of struggle, your natural instinct may be to shout it from the rooftops. You want to testify, to tell everyone how God came through. But not everyone who hears your testimony will rejoice with you. Some will smile but envy, others will listen but doubt, and some may even begin to subtly oppose what God is doing. That's why spiritual maturity requires discernment, knowing when to speak and when to stay. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. When a seed is planted, it grows in the dark, covered, hidden, protected. The same applies to divine blessings. If you uncover them too soon, you risk exposing them to spiritual elements that can damage their growth. Sacred silence is the soil where your financial blessings mature safely until God Himself decides it's time for others to see the harvest. Every blessing carries a process, and silence keeps you aligned with God's timing. Think of Joseph. He had a dream so bright, so powerful that he couldn't contain it. He shared it with those closest to him, yet those very people became the source of his greatest pain. The dream wasn't wrong, the timing was. When God reveals His plan or sends increase into your life, He's often testing your ability to handle the weight of it privately before displaying it publicly. Your ability to stay silent in the season of preparation determines the strength of your manifestation later. Silence disciplines your spirit. It humbles your heart and reminds you that blessings are not trophies, they are trusts. You don't have to prove that God is blessing you. Your life will make that clear in due time. Sacred silence also guards your heart from pride. It's easy to slip into the subtle trap of thinking the blessing is about you, your effort, your intelligence, your persistence. But when you choose silence, you strip away the ego's desire for attention and refocus your gratitude on the true source, God Himself. Silence says, I know where this came from, and I know who deserves the glory. When you stay quiet, you invite God to continue working through you instead of allowing your own words to interfere with His plan. Sometimes, speaking too soon can bring unnecessary pressure or invite comparison. People start measuring your blessing against theirs, and suddenly what was meant to bring peace begins to bring distraction. But in silence, your soul stays anchored. You continue to grow in humility, protecting not only your blessing but also your heart. Sacred silence isn't about isolation, it's about preservation. It doesn't mean you never share your story. It means you wait until God gives you permission to. When the time is right, your testimony will carry power, not pride. But before that, it must be tested in silence. Silence allows the blessing to purify you, to teach you, and to build spiritual maturity. When God increases you financially, it's not just to raise your status, it's to raise your stewardship. In quiet seasons, He refines your mindset, adjusts your motives, and ensures that you're ready to handle more. The less you speak about your blessing, the more you'll hear His instruction on how to manage it. Many people lose their blessings not because the enemy stole them, but because their words exposed them before they were strong enough to sustain them. Silence, therefore, is protection, not punishment. Finally, sacred silence strengthens your faith. It teaches you to trust God without the validation of others. When you can carry a miracle without needing to announce it, you prove that your faith is rooted not in attention, but in intimacy with Him. The quiet seasons are where character is built, where obedience is tested, and where divine trust deepens. Silence is not emptiness. It's the womb of miracles. It's where God hides you while He perfects you. When you honor your financial blessings with silence, you declare, "Lord, I trust your timing more than my own excitement." And when the world finally sees what God has been doing behind closed doors, it won't be because you told them. It will be because God revealed it Himself. Sacred silence, therefore, is not the absence of testimony. It is the preparation for a greater one. When God's favor rests upon your life, it doesn't always come wrapped in comfort or applause. Sometimes the very thing that heaven gives to lift you higher becomes the reason some people turn against you. That's because favor, when misunderstood, often provokes confusion in those who can't see the hand of God at work. When God begins to bless you financially, spiritually, or through open doors that defy logic, those who once walked beside you may start questioning why you and not them. What they fail to realize is that favor isn't something you earn. It's something you're chosen for. It's divine selection, not human validation. And when people can't interpret divine selection, they often attack what they don't understand. That's why spiritual discernment is vital. To recognize that not every conflict around your favor is personal. Some battles arise simply because light exposes what darkness can't comprehend. When God promotes you, not everyone will celebrate, but your response must be grace, not explanation. Joseph's story is the perfect example of misunderstood favor. He was favored by God and chosen for greatness, yet that same favor drew hatred from his own brothers. They couldn't understand why the youngest, the dreamer, carried such a strong promise. What they perceived as arrogance was actually divine assignment. When you carry favor, you'll often be misunderstood the same way. People will misread your confidence as pride, your blessings as manipulation, and your advancement as luck. But what they don't see is the cost of your obedience, the nights of prayer, the battles you fought in silence. That's why you must learn to stay calm when others can't interpret your favor correctly. Their misunderstanding doesn't change your anointing. The same God who gave you the promise will vindicate you in His time. Your responsibility is to keep walking in love while God handles the rest. When favor manifests financially, the misunderstanding deepens. People tend to equate wealth with greed or assume that success means compromise. But divine increase isn't about vanity, it's about assignment. God doesn't bless you to boast, He blesses you to be a blessing. However, when those around you have not yet matured spiritually, they might project their insecurity onto your breakthrough. They may accuse you of changing, when in truth it's their perception that has changed. This is why wisdom is essential. You must know how to handle visibility without losing humility. You must understand that some people will celebrate your blessing publicly but question it privately. That's not your burden to carry. You can't spend your energy defending what God has already justified. Misunderstood favor doesn't need defense. It needs discernment. Let your integrity and consistency speak louder than your explanations. When God begins to favor you, your life becomes a mirror that reflects what others have yet to become. Sometimes the attack isn't about who you are, it's about what you represent. Favor reveals hearts. It exposes jealousy, reveals insecurity, and tests loyalty. Some people loved you when you were struggling because your pain made them comfortable. But when your blessing arrives, it confronts the complacency of others. That's why favor attracts warfare. You're no longer fighting for survival, you're fighting to stay focused amidst distraction. The attack is rarely about your success, it's about your influence. The enemy knows that when God favors you, you become a living testimony of his faithfulness. So he uses misunderstanding to isolate you, to make you question your worth, and to silence your gratitude. But you must remember, divine favor doesn't need to be explained to those who refuse to see it through spiritual eyes. Favor misunderstood also tests your humility. It's tempting to want to prove your innocence, to explain yourself, or to justify why you bless. But humility teaches you to stay silent and let God speak for you. When people gossip, accuse, or misinterpret your blessings, your greatest power is restrained. Your silence becomes a shield and your peace becomes a statement. Because the truth is, favor that comes from God will eventually speak for itself. In due time, those who question you will witness the fruit of what they once doubted. God has a way of preparing a table in the presence of your critics, not to humiliate them, but to glorify himself. So don't waste your breath trying to convince people that your success is legitimate. Instead, let your character confirm it. The same grace that brought you the blessing will sustain you through misunderstanding. Lastly, understand that favor misunderstood is also favor refined. The misunderstanding shapes your endurance, matures your spirit, and deepens your dependency on God. Every false accusation, every jealous glance, every whisper behind your back becomes part of your preparation. God allows it not to punish you, but to polish you. He's teaching you how to walk in favor without being controlled by opinions. He's training you to value his approval over human applause. So when people attack what they can't comprehend, lift your eyes higher. You're not called to explain divine mysteries to human minds. You're called to carry favor with grace. And in the end, those who once misunderstood your blessing will realize it wasn't luck, it was the unmistakable hand of God resting on your life. When God begins to bless you, when his favor starts to bloom in your life, you don't have to prove it, explain it, or advertise it, because true fruit speaks for itself. The evidence of God's hand upon your life doesn't need a microphone, it needs maturity. There's a quiet strength in letting your results tell your story. Words can be doubted, but fruit cannot be denied. You can tell people how faithful God is, but when they see your peace in chaos, your joy in trial, and your increase in seasons where others struggle, they'll know for themselves. That's the beauty of divine fruit. It carries its own testimony. It's not loud, it's not boastful, but it's undeniable. When God blesses you financially or elevates you in any area of life, your responsibility is not to announce it, but to steward it. People may question your words, but they can't argue with your harvest, the fruit of your life. Your character, integrity, generosity, and endurance will speak volumes long after your explanations fade away. The fruit of your life is the clearest reflection of your relationship with God. It's not about what you say you believe, it's about what your life produces because of that belief. A tree doesn't talk about how good it is, it just bears fruit. In the same way, your life should quietly reveal the faithfulness of God. Every breakthrough, every answered prayer, every act of kindness becomes evidence that the word is working in you. The reason many people lose credibility is because their fruit doesn't match their confession. They talk about faith but live in fear. They declare abundance but walk in lack. But when you're truly rooted in Christ, your fruit aligns with your words. People will see consistency, humility, and wisdom flowing through your life. That's when they'll know, not by your speech, but by your fruit, that God is with you. The fruit becomes your silent sermon, your living proof that the promises of God are not just spoken, but manifested. When God blesses you financially, the fruit becomes visible in how you manage what He's given. Prosperity is not just about accumulation, it's about manifestation. Your fruit reveals whether your heart can handle abundance. Some people receive increase and become arrogant, while others receive increase and become generous. The difference lies in the root. A good tree produces fruit that nourishes others. So, when God increases you, your fruit should overflow into the lives of those around you, helping the needy, encouraging the broken, and supporting the work of the kingdom. You don't have to convince anyone that God is blessing you. Just keep bearing fruit. Fruit that brings glory to Him, not attention to yourself. In time, your consistency will silence doubt. People who once questioned your journey will see the results and realize that your faith was real all along. Fruit doesn't argue, it just proves. Your fruit also speaks in the seasons when words fail. When life tests you, when challenges arise, and when you're misunderstood, your fruit will defend you. You don't need to retaliate, justify, or explain yourself. Your patience, kindness, and resilience will do the talking. There's something powerful about remaining gracious in the face of criticism. It shows that your roots are deep, that your stability isn't dependent on people's approval, but on God's presence. A storm may shake the branches, but it can't uproot what's planted in truth. That's why Jesus said, "You'll know them by their fruits." It's not the eloquence of your speech that reveals who you are, it's the endurance of your fruit. When others gossip, keep serving. When others doubt, keep believing. When others attack, keep loving. When others attack, keep loving. Over time, the evidence will become undeniable. The fruit of your life will become the loudest answer to every question about your authenticity. Words can be manipulated, but fruit cannot be faked for long. Many people can talk about faith, but only a few can consistently live it out. Your fruit is not a performance. It's the natural outcome of staying connected to the source. When you abide in God, fruit comes naturally. You don't have to strive or force it. The peace you carry, the wisdom you show, the success you experience, all of it flows from intimacy with Him. So when you see real fruit in your life, remember that it's not your doing, it's the evidence of His presence. And when others try to copy the results without the relationship, their fruit will eventually wither. That's why you must never compare your journey with anyone else's. Focus on your own growth, your own process, your own pruning. Fruit that lasts is never rushed. It's nurtured in hidden seasons of obedience and surrender. In the end, your fruit will be your legacy. Long after people forget your words, they'll remember how you lived, how you gave, how you loved, and how you endured. The fruit of your life, your actions, your impact, your testimony will continue to speak when you're silent. Every seed of obedience you've sown, every act of kindness you've done, and every sacrifice you've made will one day bloom into a harvest that no one can deny. You don't need to promote yourself when heaven is your witness. Just keep producing fruit that honors God. Let your peace be proof. Let your progress be proof. Let your generosity be proof. In a noisy world full of words, the quiet fruit of a faithful life still speaks the loudest. There is something sacred about what happens between you and God in the quiet places. In those unseen moments where no one is watching, no one is applauding, and no one is recording. That's where true faith is proven. Private obedience is not about performance. It's about devotion. It's when you choose to obey God's voice, even when no one else understands why. The world celebrates visibility, but heaven honors secrecy. God watches what you do in private, the prayers you whisper in the dark, the sacrifices you make in silence, the forgiveness you extend without recognition. These are the invisible acts of obedience that move the heart of God. While others may only see the reward later, God sees the process now. Every hidden yes builds the foundation for your public reward. What looks small in the moment carries eternal weight. Private obedience is where destiny begins, because God always rewards faithfulness long before the crowd ever notices. When God asks something of you in private, He's testing your heart before He promotes your life. Many people want a public platform without private discipline. They want visibility without obedience, promotion without surrender. But God doesn't operate that way. He measures your readiness not by your words, but by your response in secret. Can you follow His instruction when no one claps for you? Can you give when it hurts? Can you serve when it's unseen? Those are the questions heaven asks. Private obedience proves your trust in God's character, not just His blessing. It's easy to obey when it's convenient, but true obedience shows up when it's costly. And when you obey in private, God begins to align opportunities, relationships, and breakthroughs in ways you can't yet see. The world calls it luck. Heaven calls it the fruit of obedience. Private obedience also breaks pride. It strips away the desire to be noticed and replaces it with the longing to please God alone. There's a beautiful humility that forms when you do the right thing, even when no one else knows. It refines your motives and purifies your heart. You begin to obey not for recognition, but for relationship. Every private act of faith builds a deeper connection with God. When you give quietly, when you forgive secretly, when you pray for those who've hurt you without ever telling them, you're aligning your heart with His. God doesn't overlook those moments. He treasures them. Because while men see appearance, God sees intention. He rewards not just what you do, but why you do it. That's why Jesus said, "Your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly." The world may not see your tears, but heaven counts every one. The quiet obedience of today becomes the public testimony of tomorrow. Sometimes private obedience feels like loneliness because it often separates you from the crowd. When you truly follow God's voice, you may have to walk paths that others can't understand. He might ask you to give something up, to sow a seed, to wait when everyone else rushes ahead. It's in those moments that your faith is refined. Private obedience requires trust that God sees what no one else does and that He will honor your surrender. Think about Abraham climbing the mountain with Isaac. No one was there to witness his obedience, no audience to cheer him on, just a father, a son, and a promise that tested his faith. Yet, it was in that private moment of obedience that God revealed His provision. Many of God's greatest blessings are released in secret. The public reward always comes after the private test. Private obedience is also the hidden foundation of public influence. You cannot carry great authority in the open if you have not learned humility in the secret place. God will not expose you to the world until your character is ready to hold what He's about to give. That's why some doors take longer to open, not because God is withholding, but because He's still preparing you. Every unseen yes to God builds spiritual muscle. Every moment of obedience sharpens your discernment. By the time your reward becomes visible, you're no longer driven by pride, but by purpose. The reward isn't just about material blessing. It's about divine recognition. God publicly honors those who privately honored Him. He shines a light on those who obeyed in the dark. The applause of heaven always precedes the acknowledgement of men. Private obedience also protects the purity of your testimony. When your life is rooted in secret submission to God, no one can claim credit for your success but Him. The world will see your promotion but never fully understand your process. They'll see your fruit but not your pruning. That's what makes your reward divine. It's undeniably God's doing. He promotes you in ways that silence doubt and glorify His name. Every quiet prayer, every act of obedience, every tear you sow becomes a seed in heaven's soil. In time, those seeds bloom into public favor and visible reward, not because you sought recognition, but because you sought righteousness. The God who sought you in secret will never forget your faithfulness. What you did in private, the obedience, the patience, the surrender, will one day stand as a living testimony that faithfulness in the hidden place always leads to honor in the open. When God blesses you, protect the sacredness of His work in your life. Every miracle, every increase, and every answered prayer carries divine purpose, and sometimes that purpose can only unfold in silence. Not every blessing is meant to be announced, because true favor doesn't need validation. The quiet seasons of obedience, the hidden moments of faith, and the unseen sacrifices you've made are all building a testimony that will one day speak louder than any words could. When you walk in private obedience, you allow God to prepare your heart for public reward. When you choose sacred silence, you guard your blessing from misunderstanding and pride. And when you let your fruit do the talking, your life becomes a living sermon that glorifies the one who gave it all. Remember, divine favor often attracts misunderstanding, but don't let that distract you. Keep walking in humility, stay faithful in secret, and let God reveal your story in His timing. Your fruit, your consistency, your integrity, these will testify of His goodness far more powerfully than any announcement ever could. Continue to trust the process, even when it's unseen, because what you do in private, heaven witnesses. What you surrender in silence, heaven multiplies, and what you nurture with faith, heaven rewards. So keep your heart pure, your words few, and your obedience steady. In due season, your life will shine with undeniable evidence of God's faithfulness. Stay rooted, stay grateful, and let your journey reflect His glory. Thank you for listening, and may the peace of God, the wisdom of His Spirit, and the abundance of His blessings overflow in every area of your life. God bless you.